Welcome to Exit Algorithms, the podcast where we decode what it really takes to unlock growth, streamline operations, and prepare your business for a high-value exit. I'm your host, Pete Vera, and today I'm excited to introduce our guest, Jeff Condren. He's a certified financial planner and senior vice president at Mesirow Wealth Management, a Barron's top 100 RIA firm with over $11 billion in assets under management. Jeff was named a Forbes 2024 Best in State Top Next Gen Wealth Advisor and has spent 2 decades guiding business owners and families through complex financial decisions. Jeff, so excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's useful to start off. Do you mind sharing a bit about your background and your whole, from where you went to school and your whole career?
Sure.
What led you to Mesirow?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, came to school in Chicago, was in the business school. I'm the son of an accountant, but knew in high school I did not want to do accounting, but I knew I liked business. And so went to the business school. During college, got an internship at a large financial services firm. Very happy with that. Was there for a number of years in a few different roles. Left that industry for 2 years to go into consulting. I had a great experience, but consulting and sales are 2 very different worlds. So about 11 years ago, I joined Mesirow and have been with the same team, working with the same individuals and clients these last 11 years. And so as part of it, we work with a lot of business owners. And so I think that's what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the audience. And of course, they make a few pivotal financial decisions I'm sure we'll talk a lot about. How about we start off maybe, what are some of the biggest financial mistakes you see business owners make as they scale?
Yeah, I think one of them is, especially as they scale and then they look to say, well, hey, look, my exit may be coming, is they treat things almost like a transaction versus, hey, this is a multi-year planning event. So as they're scaling, they're taking those opportunities to say, hey, we're going to expand, we're going to acquire a business. They realize it's not a one and done type situation. They're looking 3, 4, 5 years ahead going, well, hey, if we do this, this is what it could mean. They're looking at their projections and valuations. But when they go to make the exit, they go, oh, well, this is just a transaction. This is a one-time thing and we're done. When in reality, it's the same sort of multi-year planning. Some of the best exits, need at least 24 to 36 months. If we can get longer than that, then there's more planning, less hasty decision-making that goes into it. And so when how do I want to say this? Their biggest error isn't technical. It's not technical errors. It's not planning far enough in advance for the decisions they're looking to make.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah. So not planning far in advance. So say they do come to you 3 years out from their exit. What would you look at to help them prep?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. I would think in an ideal situation, we have more than 3 years. I would say if we can get 4 to 5 even, that's even better, because then we can really take a holistic look at everything. And then no decisions are being made kind of knee-jerk reaction style. So we'll look at the tax strategy of the company. Are they an S-Corp? Are they a C-Corp? What's going on? Is a small business stock involved? There's different estate techniques. So we'll bring in an estate planner. We have someone at Mesirow who can help with some of this as well. We'll look to see if different trusts make sense. Are they going to do a, retained trust? Are they going to do any sort of charitable giving? Those sorts of things. And we kind of have all this pre-sale gifting strategies in mind. And then are they going to, it sounds kind of silly to say this way, are they going to remain a resident in that state when they sell, or are they going to kind of preemptively move to another state where maybe it's the taxes? And so we can talk through the pros and cons of some of those decisions. There's also, that gives us time where we can look to say, okay, well, we think we're going to get 7 million, but the owner thought they were going to get 10. Okay, well, now we can identify some of these valuation gaps. And now it's not I'm upset that I'm not getting the value I want, and go, okay, what's it going to take to get us there over the next 4 or 5 years? We can then look at them and say, is this enough? What is enough for the exit? Is 7 million enough? Maybe they just had 10 in mind, but really 7's a good number. And then we can start to get some of those insurance things in place. Maybe a lot of stuff was handled by the business that's now going to be on them personally. A lot of the asset protection, again, kind of going back to some of that trust stuff, and go through and say, hey, look, what do we need to do? When does it need to be done by? Is this a pre-sale? Is this a post-sale decision to be done? Even at 2 or 3 years, there's still a lot of that can be done. Obviously a tighter time frame. Some of the due diligence side on what we do and getting them ready for a wealth standpoint is going to be a little quicker because it's now, hey, this is 24 months from now. So decisions need to be made a little bit faster. But we can still go through and do some of the trust stuff. Look at what the valuations are. Does it make sense to do it this way? Does it make sense to do that way? It's just the decision making is a little faster, and sometimes that's not always the best way to handle things.
Yeah, oh, that makes sense. Definitely takes time to prepare for, such a big event in their life.
Absolutely.
On the business side of the things, on the business side of things, what would you like to see in a business? Are there some best practices that business owners can implement before they even think about selling?
Yeah, I think some of it is what really kind of separates those who build the multi-generational wealth versus like a one and done, if you will, is there's a few things. The ones who are able to separate their identity from the business makes a huge difference, right? They hire leadership before they're quote ready, right? A lot of business owners, especially if it's first generation, have that this is me, this is my identity, this is who I am, this is what I do. And it's hard for them to let go of that. But if they can start to separate out a little bit between, hey, this is the business and this is me and who I am and what I want to do, it really helps. And it also makes bringing in, especially if a family wants to keep it to be a multi-generational, it helps allow that second generation a chance to kind of come in. They look at things and kind of along the same lines, key person risk. If they're the sole owner, sole everything, and they die, then what happens to the business, right? If they can start to realize, hey, listen, I want this to continue on beyond me, beyond today, and say, well, hey, listen, I maybe need to get, whether it's outside family, whether it is family, like I can't be the big risk to the business. Again, that goes back to 3-5 year conversations of, well, who do I want that person to be? Or who do I want that management team to be? Is it internally? Is it externally? Internally family members, externally business management kind of things. That can help look at things. They can start to delegate real authority as well. Once they start to have that separation, they can say, well, I want to focus on this, or I want to do this part of the business. I can have others handle these other parts of the business. And then what they'll start to see is that some of the businesses, some parts of the business at least, can run without their oversight, if you will. And so when it's not entirely dependent on the founder, things start to work a little bit better, and it like starts to last longer. The other thing I would start to say, and we'll kind of talk about this maybe at the end as one of my best advice, if you will, is they start to diversify before the thought of the liquidity event comes into place. What I mean by that is it's not uncommon for the business owners we work with who have like essentially their entire net worth into the business. Maybe their house isn't, or a car isn't, kind of thing, but basically everything else is. And so if they can over time slowly move some of their assets outside of the business, that kind of helps as well. And that will also help if there's disruption in the industry, if there's family conflict, on the financial side, if there's market cycles, right? If everything's tied up into the business and something goes south with the business, then that's going to go south for them as well. But if they're able to kind of like get some of that concentration outside of the business over time, I'm not saying, hey, sell half the business in 1 year and half the next, but like if we can take 1 to 2% a year and move it outside the business over 10, 15, 20 years, that suddenly becomes significant kind of thing. And it's some of the other things, right? They think long-term, they don't think short-term. They're looking at building a culture. They're looking at who they want the next generation to be. Where a lot of people get in trouble is that lack of succession planning. And some of it is, some of the best business owners are the ones, who do it themselves and are reluctant. But if they can start to get that idea that this is going to be a longer term and I need to take these steps, then the business can really bloom and grow and be a multi-generational family business.
God, I love that answer. Thank you. A lot of useful nuggets there. And I love the emphasis on identity as well. I think that's really important. There's a lot of case studies, examples of business owners that just, they're not really ready to sell mentally.
Right. No, absolutely. Well, and some of it too is they have almost, especially if it's a first generation business, they view themselves, no matter how big the business might be, they view themselves as a small business. And it's a mindset of, this is my company, this is mine, this is me, this is, kind of thing. They need to kind of shift that mindset, if you will, if they want it to be multi-generational, to be like, this is a family enterprise. This is something that is going to be around for long periods of time. And that shift needs to take into things like governance, board structure, tax plan. I mean, like there's a lot of things that go into it. So again, 2 to 3 years, if we look at the exit, is great, but really it's the 5 or 10 before that, hey, do they have good governance? Do they have good reporting structure? Do they understand, their EBITDA and what does it mean, and what that means to their net income, how that could grow, how that could change? They kind of, for lack of better words, professionalize it before they have to. And if they do, then it's going to be one of these, this business is going to go on for a long period of time. If they don't, then it might be a one and done type generation, or maybe a second generation and done, because they focus so much on, well, it's my company and this is it, and this is my identity kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. Yeah, and on the topic of what to do with the business proceeds, how do you recommend business owners when they sell, where do they put that money to make it last and create that general wealth as their goal?
Yeah. So one of the things we do, especially if we have the time, is we love to talk scenarios with clients on, okay, your life, your personality, your everything was this business. It's not going to be now going forward. We're going down the sale and this is it. And so we talk to them about what are their goals, what are their wants, what are their needs, that sort of thing. And I don't always like using this example, but I can't think of a better one. Sometimes I refer to it as just the simple bucket strategy. Hey, let's think about buckets, right? Let's silo some things real quick. What can't we risk? I want to continue the lifestyle I have. I don't want to be forced to sell anything if there's a downturn. For some people, that might be 6 months of living expenses. For some people, that might be 2 years of living expenses, right? But there's some part of it that we don't want to risk. And we need to know, that's our bedrock. That's our foundation of we never want to have to, we always want this and we never want to lose it. Then that next step is kind of, okay, what's the short-term risk, or what are the known planned future expenses? So maybe like, hey, listen, 6 months after we sell the business, I want to take a trip around the world. I want to buy that second, third home, or I want to help a kid or a grandkid with their home, or the wedding, or whatever that is. Great. Okay. When is that? That's 1 year. That's 3 years. That's 5 years. Great. Let's plan for that money so it's readily available. So when that time comes, again, we're not forced selling when it comes to whatever the market's doing in that situation. Then that last is really, hey, this is the long-term growth. This is the opportunistic capital. This is the multi-generational, generation skipping type things. How much is that? What are you looking to do? And for a lot of clients, those buckets, what goes into them varies a lot. For some people, it's like, listen, I've helped my kids enough. I want to either have the no risk and the long term. There are other people that are like, listen, we don't have a lot of lifestyle spending. That bucket's going to be pretty minimal, but we really want to emphasize the multi-generational, the long-term growth for generations to come. Let's build that bucket up. And great. From there, then we start to have the conversation of, what does that look like? What does that mean for our investments? Are we looking into just public equities? Are we going into private equities? What does that mean? Do they understand the illiquidity of it? Different illiquidity than a business, if you will. But then we have to be careful with it too, because there is some overconfidence that comes into play of, I don't need to worry about this. I don't need to force out. I've been through market cycles with my business. I can get through this too. And it's like a little bit different this time, right? Like, don't have that overconfidence. Sometimes also that lifestyle creep kind of comes into play. Great. Now I have all this money. Now I can do whatever I want. We want to be mindful that, yes, you have worked hard and you want that trip or that home. Like, yes, but let's be mindful of what we're trying to do. And then some of the extended family kind of coming in, if they know that you've sold a business and know what you've gotten, well, hey, can you help me? Can you help do this? Can you help do that? It's like, it's hard to say no. But you just have to be mindful that if you say yes, they're likely going to continuously come back, kind of thing. So,
yeah, all very important to consider.
Yeah.
Are there any tax strategies you recommend as far as what to do with the sale proceeds? There's options to be paid out over time, from a business sale versus all lump sum. I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so this is one of those where we would want to get the estate planner involved as well. So we're making sure we have things kind of understood and we know what's going on. It also kind of depends on how the deal has been structured. Are they getting a one-time payout? Are they getting a multi-year payout? Is it one of those, hey, it's going to be paid out over 5 years and they have to be part of the business for so long? So we do talk with them about like, hey, here are ways to minimize taxes and what might be owed. There are things where using different trusts can definitely help protect those assets, especially again, if family comes in, creditors come in after a death and they know you have these assets. again, insurance isn't something Mesirow sells, but we want to make sure they're covered because maybe the business was paying for their insurance over time. So we definitely talk different strategies: grant to retain annuity trust, charitable trust, like if they want to donate during their lifetime, but make sure the assets get back to the family at their death, or vice versa. They want to give to the family now, and then at their death, it goes to charity. It's kind of what their wishes are and what they're looking to accomplish. Once we know that, then we'll build a liquidity framework for them and say, okay, based off what you heard, this is our recommendation. And again, having a few years to go through things helps, because you go, you know what, I thought I wanted that, but really what I'm looking to do is this, or that's not enough for the next generation. I want to get more to them. Okay, well, are you willing to take less? Are you looking to do something else? And so there's a lot of trust that come into play. And then there's always some insurance policies. I'll use an easy one, a second to die life policy as an example that, hey, maybe that's something we look to buy because the family wants to take on some certain expenses now, but they want to make sure the family members, the next generation, gets so much when they pass. Again, we'll go through the cost of buying it. What does that look like? Any sort of risk mitigation, if you will, overall, whether it's through trust, through insurance, through the actual investment themselves, are things we talk through. And each one's a little bit different. Unfortunately, with a lot of financial planning, there is no exact answer. There is no right or wrong answer. And so sometimes it is how does the client feel about paying the tax? How does the client feel about paying the expense? They like it, they don't like it. Okay, well, let us adjust and go from there. And again, that's why having a few years to go through the different ideas helps. First, okay, hey, we're 12 months out, we're doing this. It's like, well, you may not have the time to get the trust structure you want. The valuation's already been established, so we can't give ideas to maybe help grow it. The conversation's already had. Everyone's now just focused on making sure the deal is done and getting the after-tax proceeds going.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. Yeah, it definitely depends on the individual. There's no one size fits all.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, the farthest away from the exit you can plan, the better.
Absolutely. And even if they, let's just say they think they're more than 5 years out and they go, well, I don't think I'm ever going to sell. Going through the practice and the steps may just bring ideas up and let things come up. I've never met with a business owner where we've had these conversations and go, that was a bad meeting to have. I told you I was never going to sell. It's like, great, but we helped you identify this, or we showed you that, hey, you actually can live off what you think. It gives them ideas that maybe they otherwise wouldn't focus on. So rarely have I had like a bad meeting. You still benefit from all the planning that goes in with our conversations. They may never thought of different trust structures for the family. They thought, that's not enough for me. I'm not a Rockefeller. I'm not a Morgan. I don't have that kind of money. Why do I need a trust? And then we walk them through the examples and they go, oh, okay, like great, something to consider, especially if we do go down this path. 3 years, 4 years later, they go, hey, listen, we talked about this. Does this still make sense? Great. Here's the estate laws that may or may not have changed. Here's the limits that may or may not have changed. Let's update it and let's have a conversation from there. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it makes sense. Let's say, going back to the buckets, let's say the owner's bucket is that generational wealth. And they want to make it last, have a legacy. What are maybe some big ticket items business owners should focus on to do that? You mentioned a trust, right?
Yeah, trusts are obviously the biggest thing. When I think of big ticket, I think more on the expense side of things. Like what's going to be the expense that disrupts the plan that we're looking to do? So they say, yep, I want to have this long-term growth. I'm focused on the next however many years and then multi-generational. Oh, but I'm going to go buy a Porsche. Oh, I'm going to buy, a new home and I'm going to pay cash, or I'm going to go do this. And it's like, okay, that wasn't part of all the conversations we've had prior to this. This is now going to change our plan. Not that plans can't change. They obviously can, right? We never go in and say, well, here's your one plan and we can't deviate from it. But it is that lifestyle creep that sometimes we have to warn clients about, like, hey, you thought you were going to need, I'll make it up, 250,000 from the account over the years. You're trending at 400, 500 over the last 3 years. So we either need to adjust how we invest so we can continue to meet these needs, talk about why we've had some of the expenses. Are they, well, it was a one-time to help a house. It was a one-time trip for the entire family. It was a one-time. It's like, that's fine. But if we're going to continuously have one-time expenses every year, then we need a plan for that. And so that's where I get kind of worried with some of the clients after they have these exits, is those things that they never thought they could do that now they're doing, and they're not just doing it one time, they're doing it multi-times. And they kind of focus on, or I should say maybe they don't focus on developing the financial literacy for their next generation. Because what happens is their kids and grandkids now see, oh, well, we can just do this, we can do that. And so they're now of the mindset of course, we can afford all of this. They kind of ignore the trust or the governance structure that have been put in place. And then they avoid having those difficult conversations of, hey, listen, we thought we were going to be able to give X to the next generation or whatever, but you know what? We're actually going to change our mind, or we're going to do something else, or we're going to give it to charity, or you thought you were going to get 5 million next generation. We're going to give each of you only 1 million, and so they kind of hide those conversations. Those are the things that can really disrupt things from a planning perspective. But where trust and things along those lines come into play is it puts a structure around it. So hopefully they don't deviate too far from it. So, hey, this trust is established for the grandkids, for their college, and after college, if they reach a certain age, they're allowed to use it for these purposes. Great. Well, you have a trustee monitoring it, saying, well, hey, this isn't one of the purposes of it, kind of thing. So there is some structure to help kind of keep guidelines or parameters so no one's just invading the trust for whatever expense they need, if you will.
Got it. Yeah, I love that perspective. Makes sense. Besides the tax advantages of a trust, it's also a mechanism to control spend.
Right. Exactly. And so, it is one of those, like I said, especially if we think multi-generational, there's going to be family conflict. Not everyone's always going to agree. There's going to be market cycles. So the more often and frequently you can talk and have it be I don't want to say conflict, but a family conversation of, here's what we're doing, here's the plan, here's the path, here's how next generation kids or grandkids, if they're old enough, if you will, are going to be a part of things, helps avoid any, well, I didn't know that, or why are you doing this later kind of conversations. And so we know there's going to be bad years in the market, but we can get around that and talk to them about like, well, hey, listen, we built for this, we're structured for this. This doesn't change the long-term goal, but a family conflict, a divorce, poor succession planning, reactive decisions, not investing, those can destroy things in a much different way.
Yeah, totally. It makes a lot of sense. Two sides of the coin, right? Saving and
Absolutely.
spending. Well, I wanted to also, going off a little bit off script here, but in my research, I noticed you're really involved with some philanthropy organizations. And I was curious, one of the things we always talk about just how to sustain yourself too, to be able to sustain growth in your business. Maybe if you could share a bit about how you manage your time to be so productive.
Yeah, I mean, with myself, thankfully, the nonprofit I've been associated with is in town as well. A lot of their meetings, a majority of their meetings happen to be on weekends. I have a great team here at Mesirow who's able to support me. So when the time comes and I do have a meeting, whether over Zoom or in person, one, it's not far for me to go, but two, I know I have a great team who's going to support me and do all that. And this is something I talk with business owners. It's what are you going to be after the business kind of thing? How are people going to know you? What are you looking to do? Music education for me has been an important thing in my life and my wife's life. And so our kids, they've older two have also had music, but it's something that we can get behind and support. Everyone's going to have something a little bit different that they want to support and do. But that's some of the conversation with the family. Hey, listen, we're going, this philanthropy, this charity is something we're going to do, whether it's nonprofit with music, whether it's a high school, college, grade school, whether it's a religious organization, whether it's a, cancer organization or whatever, right? Like, what's your identity? How are you going to be remembered after the business kind of thing? And it is one of those where, again, it kind of takes that time where they go, well, I don't know, we've never thought about it, or maybe we've only ever donated because the business was in this type of industry, so we only donated to these, but we've always had a passion for this. Great. Like, is there an existing organization you can be a part of? Can you join? Can you donate? And then, going back to some of the structures, there might be a donor advised fund that the family's using if there's a concentrated public stock. Hey, listen, are we structuring, giving some of that to the organization? What does that mean? What does that look like? But for me, it is a balancing act. The work-life balance is always a struggle. 3 kids who are heavily involved in sports and other activities, plus the nonprofit comes and goes. But again, great support with my wife and then the team here at Mesirow who are able to make sure that, we're all aligned on what we're trying to do. Doesn't mean the calendars don't get mixed up from time to time and there's a little bit of a headache, but we're able to work through that.
Yeah, I love that. I recently listened to Arnold Schwarzenegger's biography, well, kind of self-help, Be Useful. I don't know if you've delved in that one, but he talks about that too. Like, philanthropy is, it's important to start doing like yourself, like before you retire.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, really cool. Yeah, and I know we're coming up on time here shortly. I want to give you the floor. If you could just give one practical tip for business owners trying to build wealth for the long term.
Yeah, it sounds so silly to say, and this is something not specific to just business owners and kind of any client I work with is pay yourself first. And I don't mean like a literal paycheck. I mean, think about setting up a monthly transfer of some kind to a retirement account or an investment account of some kind and treat it like you would a non-negotiable expense. Like, so if you are a business owner, hey, this is just like my payroll. This is just like my rent. This is just like the taxes I have to pay. Do it. And again, going back to the earlier part where I kind of said, hey, listen, if we can do a small amount of this over long periods of time, it really adds up. You know, if you think about it, the business is just one asset. Long-term wealth can be built by owning multiple assets, whether you're working on them or not. So if you're consistently contributing to a investment account of some time, and those assets appreciate, hopefully just like the business is appreciating, then you have, if you have two different assets growing, and that consistency of regularly contributing, even if it's once a year, but hopefully it can be more often. And that consistency will beat the timing in the market. So there's always people who come to me and go, hey, is now a good time to get in the market? And my answer is like, when are you looking to need the money? Well, I don't need it for 20 years. Then don't worry about today, next week, or next month. Over a 20-year period, you're going to be great kind of thing. Oh, I need it next week. Well, leave it as cash then, right? Like don't look to invest the kind of thing. But if you do pay yourself first and you do have that long runway, it's kind of almost one of those, you'll forget about it because you're going to be so focused on the business. And then this way too, you're not trying to move money in and out of the business to help pay for things. You're just like, hey, listen, this is something for me, my family, or whatever it is. This is going to be aligned with other goals I have. So again, the business will continue to grow because if the business valuation when you look to sell isn't where it is or isn't where you'd like it to be, well, you still have this other asset of money, this other bucket, this other investment vehicle that now you have some options to do. Well, hey, do I need to take some of this, put it back into the business? Look at things, and hopefully over a long period of time, like I said, you have multiple assets then.
Wow, yeah, really good advice. Man, thank you so much for that, all the insight. Listeners definitely gonna get a lot out of this.
Great.
Yeah, where can they find you easiest, Jeff?
Yeah, so our Mesirow website's always the easiest. That's mesirow.com. There's a little about us page, and you can find my information with my phone number and email.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll leave that in the show notes. Thanks for
Great.
coming on the show, Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Pete. Take care.